Now that the metal coatings are finished, everything's down to about 0.3. Prior to degassing, she cleaned up the metal. Everything was trimmed down with aluminum oxide stones. After that was done, she sandblasted lightly with 50 micron white aluminum oxide at 80 pounds of pressure. You do not touch it with your fingers from this point, right? No fingers. So either you're going to pick it up with the tongs, or you're going to pick it up with the hemostat, or you're going to pick it up with the tissue. But at this point, no dirty fingers, because the oil from your hands will deposit on the surface and will affect the bonding of the porcelain. So after it was sandblasted, we put it in denatured alcohol in the ultrasonic for about 5 minutes. Then the crowns were placed onto the firing, on the pegs on the firing tray. The furnace is turned on a half an hour ahead of time. This is the only furnace we're degassing in. The reason we're using this furnace, when you degas, any contaminants that are in the metal go inside the muffle and ultimately damage the muffle. If we start degassing in every furnace, we're going to damage every furnace. So that's why we degas only. It's preset on program 1. The switch is in the back. We turn it on. All porcelain starts at the manufacturer's temperature. Most of them suggest 1200 Fahrenheit. So the oven's on 1200 Fahrenheit. It's on program 1. Now we're ready to open. We're ready to open the muffle. Don't put the. Yeah, we're going to leave it on the tray. Never put crowns near the edge, because if they fall off as that carriage goes up, they're going to fall off. They're going to get stuck in the muffle. They're going to damage the muffle, and they're probably going to crush the crown. So always put the crowns in the center. So if they fall off, they're going to stay essentially where they are. So look, this one just fell off just by me picking it up. One fell off.
If it was ceramic, you would not want to do that.
Right.
The metal is okay.
Right. So I would have, but on degassing and conditioning, I'm okay. On opaquing, we got to make sure they fit really well.
Okay.
Those metal pegs, we're going to taper some of them to a point.
Okay.
After. All right. So now we're ready to start. If there was porcelain, this would have to dry. But seeing that there's no porcelain, it's set on program 1. It's at 1200 degrees. Push the start button. It just says start temperature. There is really no pre-drying because there's nothing to dry. It's just metal. So in a couple of seconds, it's going to go up. Most porcelains fire at 100 degrees a minute. All right, so if we're degassing and we're going to approximately 1850, to go from 1200 to 1850, you're looking at 650 degrees. If this is firing at 100 degrees a minute for 650 degrees, the whole thing is going to take 6.5 minutes, start to finish, 6.5 minutes. So right now, if you notice, it went up halfway. It's still in a drying cycle, even though there's nothing to dry. In a second, it's going to close. This will then go to speed. You're going to hear the vacuum pump come on. Okay, so now the oven's closing. It's going up a little further. The oven's going to close. As soon as the oven closes, the vacuum pump will start. The pump will suck all the air out of the chamber. There are gases that are trapped inside the metal. So as it's baking, any gases that are there are going to be pulled out by that vacuum pump. It's going to go up to 1850, and then it's going to let go. The vacuum will break. It'll go off. It'll start beeping. The oven will come down. It'll be at 1850 approximately. Do not touch it with your fingers. Don't touch anything. Just leave it there. It's going to go back to 1200 by itself. As soon as it gets back down to 1200, you're going to take your ceramic tongs, you're going to take it off, and you're going to put it right there on the cooling tray for about 10 minutes. Don't put it anywhere else. You can put it on a stone bench, or you can put it on a cooling tray, but don't put in anything else because it's at 1800 degrees. All right, so the oven's almost ready to close. It'll close in a second. The vacuum light will come on, the speed will come on, so you can see right where you are. Never leave a furnace when you're firing. It only takes 6 minutes. So for 6 minutes, you're going to stand right here and you're going to babysit it. So somebody else doesn't come along and start playing with the buttons and screw it all up. All right, so it's almost ready, and this is a pretty easy process. Once it comes out, you have to read the manufacturer's sheets. Some of them tell you to start opaquing right away. Some of them tell you to sandblast it again and put it back in here. Some of the different metals and some of the porcelains like oxidation. Others don't like the oxidation. So don't assume. No porcelain is the same and no metal is the same. All right, so, okay, almost there. So let's check your metal. We'll check the spec sheet, and it's going to tell you either sandblast it again or don't sandblast it. It'll tell you to alcohol or steam it, or it's going to say just go to opaque. And then the next step is I'll do a demonstration on opaquing. And that's pretty much it. Yeah. The non-precious ceramic alloy we're using in this class is argiloy. You always have to go through the specification sheets because no two alloys are the same, no porcelains are the same. So we followed all the procedures to this point. We just degassed it, and if you notice, it came out with sort of a bluish oxidation on it. Now, some companies recommend leaving it, some companies recommend taking it away. But if I look at the sheet right now, the last thing it says is remove oxide. So to remove the oxide, again, we're not going to touch it with our fingers. We'll pick up each one with a hemostat, we'll go to the sandblaster, and we'll blast it with 50 micron white aluminum oxide. After that, we're going to put it in a jar of denatured alcohol, put the lid on, put it in the ultrasonic for 2 minutes. That'll clean off all the sand, and now we're ready to start the opaquing. But before we do the opaquing, we're going to turn on the ceramic furnace. First thing you do in the morning when a ceramist comes in, they turn on their furnace, they bring it up to idle temperature, then go get your cup of coffee. Because it takes a while for it to warm up. So let's go over to the furnace and I'll show you that. It's yours. Okay. These are Commodore furnaces from the Jelenko company. First thing you do in the morning, turn on the furnace. When you come in, we want to idle. Idle temperature is recommended at 1200 degrees. So let's look at the chart before we go any further. We have a bunch of different porcelains. We're all using Ceramco 3 porcelain. Later on, we're going to be using Avanti porcelain for our pressable. Okay, the vacuum pump just turned itself off. When a pump goes off, you know you're within about 50 degrees of the oven opening. So here now, it's coming down. So now it went up to 1800 degrees. You can see it's on the final temperature. No hold, is now beginning to cool. You can see all the lights, you're hearing it ring, the program's done. So now if you look at the crowns, they had gone up to 1800 degrees. You can see a slight oxidation on the metal, which is what it's supposed to look like. Now we're going to leave it right there till it hits 1200 degrees. When it reaches 1200 degrees, then I'm going to take the ceramic tongs, put them right into that little groove so you can grab it. We're going to take it out and we're going to put it right here on the cooling tray. It's going to sit here for at least 10 minutes until it cools off. And then according to the specifications, we're going to blast it lightly. We're going to put it in the alcohol for 2 or 3 minutes to clean off the sand. And then we're ready to start opaquing. Okay, so now that the degassing process is done, you can see the one on the right. You can see the crown on the right has that bluish gray color to it. The company recommends blasting off the oxidation. So the crown on the right has not yet been blasted. The crown on the left has already been blasted. So now the oxidation, most of it's been cleaned off. Now the oxidation, now the crown will be, you can either put it in denatured alcohol, in a beaker, in an ultrasonic for 2 minutes, or you can hit it with a steamer, either one. All right, so what we're trying to do is clean off any excess sand. So again, you notice I'm not touching anything with my fingers. Either pick it up with a hemostat, pick it up with your tongs, tweezers, whatever. If it hits the floor, you pick it up with tweezers. Do not pick it up with your fingers. If you pick it up with your fingers and it's dirty, blast it again, alcohol it again, and you're back in business. But don't forget, the oils from your hands are going to mess it up every time. Okay, ready. So now just continue blasting. Throw it in here 2 or 3 minutes. And then it's ready to start the first bake. The first bake of porcelain is going to be a wash bake. It's like a primer bake. Oh, let me clean it. Want me to wipe off the glass? Did anybody cast like an hour or so ago? Yeah. You can grab your work if you want. Before somebody else seals it on you. I want to watch.